Okay, today I am going to walk you through how to create a full repeating pattern with paper and pen. In this case, paper and permanent marker. So for this, you can use any type of paper that you would like. I would recommend just making sure it has straight edges on both the horizontal and the vertical. I am using a standard sheet of paper, but like I said, you could use any size. It could be square, whatever you like. This paper is slightly heavier than traditional computer paper, more like a cardstock, but probably not quite as heavy as your traditional cardstock. And then I am just using my Sharpie markers. I tend to not love coloring in shapes with Sharpies. They're just not like my Tombos, and so you'll see instead of coloring objects fully in, I'll just be kind of filling them in with line works, dots, different things like that. As I am getting started, I typically work in the middle of the paper first. Doesn't have to be dead center, but sometimes I'm slightly off to the side. But I tend to fill the middle before I go and work on the outside edges. It just helps me with motif placements. You can do it any way you like. That just tends to be the way that I start. I also wanted to say that one of the reasons I love this practice is not only does it really help me play with composition and motif placement and space and moving the eye throughout the pattern, it feels a bit more intuitive doing it this way than on a computer screen for me. I also tend to use these as references when I go to make finalized patterns. Not all the time, they don't always turn out to be something that I want to use. But more often than not, I keep these and hang on to them. And if I do decide that I want to turn it into a technical repeat, I would just simply take a picture of this on my iPad and then bring it into either Fresco or Procreate and then redraw the images in there. You could scan them. For me, I always treat my sketchbook practice as practice, so I never have the intention that it's going to be perfect and I'm not going to recreate it. It just is more freeing for me that way. So that's my workflow is if I finish this and I loved it, I would then take a picture of it. I would redraw it on my iPad and then I would bring it into Illustrator or Photoshop and create the technical repeat there as well. The other thing I really love about getting off of my computer and my iPad and working in this manner with more traditional medium is you can't erase. So like that flower I just drew, I had a really wonky petal in there. I didn't love the way the petals were being laid out, but you just have to make it work. And in the moment I like cringed when that happened, but now that doesn't even bother me. And if I was doing it on my iPad, I would have erased that and started over. But because I don't have the ability to erase, it forces me to use a creative muscle and figure out how to make it work. So you can see right here, like I'll add these lines and then sometimes I'll go back and be like, oh, this actually feels really wonky. How do I make it feel less wonky? Maybe I add in another petal over here, where I think the tendency when you're working digitally is to just erase it and start over. So that's another reason I really love a sketchbook type practice, and for me that would fall this practice would fall into that same category. After I've laid my main motifs down, I'll go in and add some accent motifs. And here you can see I'm just drawing in some leaves and some stems. I don't ever pre-plan these. The point of this exercise for me is just to go with the flow, to be creative. And so sometimes, like I said, I'll lay this leaf down and after I'll be like, I didn't really love it, but how do I make it work? So for the sake of not boring you to death, I'm going to speed up this tutorial a tiny bit, and then I will pop in when there are things that I can point out to you that maybe are helpful along the way. Okay, now that I have the start of my motifs in that center kind of filled in, I'm gonna go ahead and fold this. Like I said, you can do any size piece of paper and you don't need to fold it directly in the middle. You can fold it just like I'm doing here. So one side is longer than the other. You just wanna make sure that your edges match up. You can kind of see just along that top and the bottom. And so now that I have that folded, I'll look, and then that is why you can see when I placed that line, I didn't draw the leaf on top of it, because if I would have, I could have ended up running right into that other leaf on the other side. So I'm going to elongate that a little bit, and then I'll draw right over that seam, and that's going to be what gives me that repeating pattern right there. So I'll draw over the seam and then kind of fill this in. And then you'll see I can open this up here and you'll see that I've got part of that on one side and part of it on the other. And now I'm just going to keep filling in this space. So right here you can see I'm just working on the movement of the leaves, that some are going in one direction and some are going in other directions, and they're kind of pulling your eye and giving the pattern some movement. So I'll just keep working on filling this in, and I kind of switch back and forth. I won't just work on filling in these edges before I move to that horizontal edge. I'll kind of go back and forth, and you'll see me doing that throughout the process. Okay, now I'm going to work on that other side. So the same thing here. You do not have to fold it directly in the middle. You can fold it in the middle if you want. You can fold one side longer, one side shorter, whatever you want, as long as you make sure that your edges line up and try to get that fold as nice and clean as you can. And then remember, when you're drawing here, you're going to want to make sure you draw over those seams. So a lot of times I will fold that and then I will unfold it and go back to drawing, and then you'll see like these petals will start to overlap onto that side, and then I'll just start working on filling in the space from there. And then you'll see I start adding in these little stems off of the leaves. When I got a few leaves in, I realized I was not loving them, and I also needed to fill the space a little bit better. So rather than forcing more of these leaves in that I was not super crazy about, I'm adding in these little flower branches off of them to help give me some more space fillers. Also these little berries with the dots, I'm adding those in as well, just so I can help fill some of that empty space. And then you'll see I'm just kind of working it. And then I'll go back and forth, folding on the horizontal axis and then on the vertical, and just kind of working my way around the pattern to make sure that I don't have any holes or gaps. And then you'll see right here, I'm just kind of checking, I had a empty space in my pattern right here. So again, that's one of those nice things about these little filler elements is I can go back in and add some of these to the pattern. I've got a little space, yep, right there. Then I'm gonna add one, two, and then I can just open the pattern back up and see if I have anything else that's just really sticking out where there's a big white space. I'm just adding in these little dots on top of the berries. You can see I'm going to add another little flower right here to break up all the green and kind of that point of tension. And then I'll do one more check to make sure I've got a little hole in the pattern right there. So I'm going to add one more stem that will kind of come up and draw the eye up there. And then I will go ahead and just double check the pattern. So once I've got this in there, I will fold it back out. It's looking pretty good. I'm gonna add one more little stem here. I can tell when you're looking at the composition that I've got a hole there. And one of the things is once I take this digitally and I get it into my computer, I will still tweak it in there. Like I can kind of see some other little spots now that I'm a little bit removed where I might change the placement. But typically when I've gone through this exercise, once I bring it in and lay the elements back out after they've been digitally created, they all line up pretty well and it's pretty minimal tweaks. So it makes that process of the technical repeat digitally pretty quick. So I'm just adding some final touches and then you can see you've got a fully repeating pattern. So it's going to repeat on your horizontal and your vertical edges. And then like I said, from there, you can always either scan it or take a photo of it and recreate it. I hope you enjoyed this repeat pattern tutorial.